Two words, torn from the final page of a Persian poem. Tamám Shud. It is ended. A dead man carried them in a hidden pocket, folded into a scrap of paper smaller than a stamp. He had no name, no wallet, no history. Every label had been cut out of his clothes. 70 years of investigation would follow that scrap of paper. Through a secret code, a locked suitcase, a nurse who lied, and a Cold War that was just beginning. And at the end of it all, the question would not be who he was. It would be, why? December the 1st, 1948. Somerton Beach, Adelaide, Australia. A warm summer evening. Couples strolling the esplanade noticed a well-dressed man slumped against the seawall, legs crossed, as if he had simply sat down to watch the sea. One woman joked that he was drunk. Nobody stopped. The next morning he was still there, in exactly the same position. A jockey exercising his horse found him cold. There was an unlit cigarette resting on his collar, as if he had died in the middle of raising it to his lips. The body made no sense. A man in his mid-40s, in peak physical condition, the muscles of a dancer or an athlete, the calves, one pathologist said, of a man who wore high-heeled riding boots. He wore a fine suit and a clean tie on a hot beach with no hat in the age of hats. His pockets held a used bus ticket, an unused train ticket, chewing gum, matches, and cigarettes. No wallet, no identification. And when police examined his clothing, they found something that turned a dead man into a mystery. Every single label had been carefully cut away. Someone, perhaps the man himself, had removed every thread that could say who he was. The autopsy made it worse. His organs were congested, his spleen 3 times normal size, blood pooled in his stomach. The signature, the pathologist believed, of poison. But every test came back clean. Nothing in the blood, nothing in the tissue. The finest chemists in Australia could not name a substance. One expert told the inquest that if it was a poison, it was one so rare that only a handful of people in the world could have used it. The coroner recorded the cause of death as unknown. He would never change it. Then came the suitcase. In January, police found it in the cloakroom of Adelaide railway station, checked in the day before the man died. Inside, clothes with the labels cut away, again. Thread, buttons, a stenciling brush of the kind used on cargo ships. And 3 items someone had missed, bearing the name T. Keane. Police traced every T. Keane in the English-speaking world. None was missing. The name led nowhere. Some investigators concluded the tags had been left on deliberately because they belonged to someone else. And then, months later, a pathologist re-examining the body found what everyone had missed. A tiny fob pocket sewn inside the trousers. And inside it, rolled tight, the scrap of paper. Tamám Shud. It is ended. The final words of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a poem about living without regret, because life ends and nothing follows. The scrap had been torn from a real book. Somewhere that book existed, with a hole where these 2 words used to be. Police published the scrap in the newspapers, and a man came forward, nervous, asking to stay anonymous. Just after the body was found, he said, he had discovered a copy of the Rubaiyat tossed into the back seat of his unlocked car, parked a few hundred meters from Somerton Beach. The final page was torn. The tear matched the scrap exactly. This was the book. And the book was not finished giving up secrets. On the back cover, faint indentations, the ghost of something written on a page that had been torn away. Under ultraviolet light, 2 things emerged: a telephone number and 5 lines of capital letters that have never been read. 50 letters, no spaces, no pattern anyone has proven. Code breakers from Australian Naval Intelligence tried. The FBI has looked at it. Amateur and professional cryptographers have worked it for 70 years. The Somerton Code, has never been broken. The telephone number, though, that led somewhere. It belonged to a nurse who lived on Glenelg Beach, minutes from where the body was found. When police brought her a plaster cast of the dead man's face, witnesses said she froze, that she seemed about to faint. Then she said she had never seen him before. She gave police a false name, Justin, and they, remarkably, let the matter rest. She spent the rest of her life refusing to speak about the case. Years later, her own daughter would say she believed her mother knew exactly who the Somerton man was. And there was one more thing. The nurse had a young son. Some researchers claimed his ears and teeth carried rare inherited traits they said the Somerton man shared. For decades, that was where it stood. A dead man with no name, a poison no one could find, a code no one could read, and a nurse who took her answer to the grave. The Cold War filled the silence. Adelaide sat near Woomera, one of the most secret missile testing ranges on Earth. 1948 was the year of spies. A man with cut labels, an untraceable poison, and a coded message. You can see the shape people saw. But no agency ever claimed him. No file has ever surfaced. Then, in 2022, the silence broke. A professor named Derek Abbott, who had spent decades on the case, working with forensic genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick, pulled DNA from hairs trapped in that plaster cast of the dead man's face. They built a family tree of thousands of names, and they found him. Carl Webb, an electrical engineer from Melbourne, born 1905, a man who wrote poetry, bet on horses, and had walked out of a failing marriage, to a wife who had moved to South Australia. Identity solved. And yet, here is the thing, almost nothing else was. No one knows how Carl Webb died. The poison was never named. No one knows why his labels were cut, or who checked the suitcase, or what 50 letters in the back of a book of Persian poetry were for. His name closed one file and left every other question standing exactly where it stood in 1948. The code is still unbroken. The nurse's silence is still unexplained. A man sat down against a seawall to watch the sea, with the end of a poem sewn into his clothes. It is ended, the paper said. 75 years later, it isn't. What do you think the 50 letters say? A cipher, a shorthand, a dying man's notes, or nothing at all? Tell me in the comments.